what's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel.
Welcome back to the podcast.
The Hustle and Muscle. I am your host, the Muscle. Oh, that's me, hon. I'm over here. And Chris is my co-host, and he is the Hustle.
Because I never stop working.
This is very true. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, you don't have to be the best, just have to be the hardest worker in the room.
Absolutely correct.
So we are currently on day 3 of our 4-day fast.
Yes.
All right, we're past the 48-hour mark. We are at our what?
We are at 43 hours. No, I'm sorry. We're further than
We had to be
that.
past that. We were at 41 hours of kickboxing
so we're 2 hours shy of 48. So
today. Okay.
46 hours.
46
hours.
hours into our fast. Water only.
And we're still working.
Yeah. The only thing we add is water and then salt, electrolytes, and magnesium. So last night, we watched on Disney Plus. It's called Limitless with Chris Hemsworth.
Shout out to Thor.
Or as sometimes they mistakenly call him Chris Graham. But Chris Hemsworth, who played Thor, he did an episode about the fasting. So if you haven't seen that and you're interested in learning about some fasting, it was definitely motivating when we're in the middle of a fast to watch that and be like, oh yeah, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
They do like a really good job, I think, at breaking it all down. And like the first time we watched it like months ago, once it ended, I was like, I want to do a fast. And the next morning I wowoke up and had like pancakes and bacon. And I was like, I can't do it. Or like I have coffee first thing when I wake up with like cream and sugar in it. And so I was like, yeah, maybe one day I'll do it. And then finally we were like, we should do it. We should definitely do the fast. And we did it kind of out of nowhere. I was like, we woke up in the morning. I was like, I'm doing it right now. I'm fasting. And I just held off for 48 hours. And we did a 48-hour fast, which we talked about on the channel maybe like 2 weeks ago. And then this one over here was like, let's do 72 hours.
Well, the goal that we had talked about was to do 72 because Dana White had just posted that he had done it. So we were like, well, let's do it the way Dana White did because you're allowed to have electrolytes and bone broth. So we decided that we were going to do it like that. But then Chris woke up in the morning and was like, oh, let's do it right now. I forgot about the bone broth.
I'm having that tonight.
You can have that after 24 hours. So yeah, you can have it now. So I know now
I've
he's
had
really
water
excited.
and salt and electrolytes, magnesium. And that's the only thing I've had. And I'm like,
it's hard. I mean, it's definitely
I had an
not easy.
espresso this morning. That was delicious. Just a black espresso.
I haven't had any coffee. I'm still doing, in the morning I wake up and I have warm lemon water. It's good for your body, good for your digestion and take your day off like that. So I still do that. It's just a teeny tiny little bit of fresh lemon water. And the electrolytes, haven't done the bone broth. Not really sure if I'm going to. Maybe tomorrow. I think I can get through today. And man, those electrolytes,
Yeah, I like think about food. I'm not that hungry. Like right now, I would think if I told myself before ever doing a fast, when I hit 40 hours, in my head, I would think like, oh my God, 40 hours, I would be like crawling on the floor. Yeah. But I'm actually like not that hungry. I just start like fantasizing about food like it's an affair with a attractively younger woman.
What does that even mean?
I just think like when I think about food,
Is this what you fantasize about?
Yeah. like a big, like a prime rib, but like a really juicy one where like you cut into it and there's like juices everywhere and it's really pink on the inside. Like that's the way I fantasize about food.
No, I started telling my friends that are posting about food. Like my one girlfriend is in the middle of a bulk right now, and all she's doing is talking about how much food she's eating and how uncomfortable she is and posting food videos. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to unfollow you for the next 48 hours because I can't watch this.
Potatoes and pasta. I think it's carbs I'm craving.
Yeah. Well,
like I'm not craving like sugary foods. Like I'm craving like steak and potatoes and like even carrots, string beans.
I mean, when we were watching last night, Limitless, he breaks his fast at the end with salmon or some kind of fish, whatever, and like leafy greens. And I was like, that looks amazing. I would kill
spinach. I could just eat some spinach leaves right
like,
now.
I'm not even craving anything necessarily bad.
Like I might go graze in the backyard, just eat some grass at this point.
Like that meal looked good to me. So I would be just fine with anything light. Yeah.
And they talk about how like once you pass the 24-hour mark, right? Like 24 hours, your body starts, because the bad toxic cells in your body are craving glucose and sugar, which come from sugar, carbs, most of the stuff that we eat. Mm-hmm. So first thing in the morning, like you wake up and you have like if you're like me and you have like coffee with cream and sugar, instantly you're breaking your fast. And those toxic cells that are like kind of dying but don't die, um, they just start like feeding on it and just keeps them alive in your body. So like when you can just shut that all off and starve them out, like once 24 hours hits, they start starving out. So once you have 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
Those cells start to like die off. So like the cells in your body that cause cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. I'm sure there's a lot of other sicknesses too, but
Diabetes, heart
diabetes, yeah.
disease, plaque.
Oh yeah. So all that stuff starts to die off, and then you start to get your good cells start attacking them and start eating them and like breaking them down, right? Like
Yeah.
is that autotrophy
That's,
thing?
yeah. We
Um,
may be pronouncing that incorrectly, but yeah.
we even ordered one of the
Oh, I
ketone
forgot we did that. I did that
blood
last
pricker,
night.
so you can prick your finger, and when the blood comes out, you could check how much ketones are in your bloodstream. And
Hmm.
once you hit so many hours, I think it's like once you pass like the 48-hour mark, or you're in the 50, 60, 70-hour mark, the ketones will start to rise. And that's what typically, like in the episode, is when you start to get, say you have to go do something like work out or hunt for food, right? Like we don't do that. We just drive to
Right.
McDonald's. But
Your
the,
senses are
the
heightened.
ketones rise to give you that boost of energy in order to get those tasks done. Because there's times where like right now where I'm like sitting here like I feel like I'm like up in the mountains, like trying to breathe, like little
Yeah.
things I do. I'm like, I'm getting so winded.
Yeah, you said earlier you feel like you're in an upward elevation, like on a mountain. And I thought that was the best way to describe how I felt when I woke up this morning.
Yeah. When I get really hungry, I want to throw myself off that mountain and just tumble down, hopefully land at like a Chick-fil-A.
You're fine. We're almost a whole 2 days in.
Yeah. But I always thought this would be worse at this point. But getting back to the point of it, we watched these videos, and I think so when we first watched Limitless like months ago, when they talk about how it can cure, like not cure, and Dana White did a video or a study, not a study. He talked about this also, about a study, how doctors will say that doing a fast, if you can hit 72 hours, is that you're starting to cut down your chances of cancer by like 70%. And again, there's no negative to doing this. Like if we do a fast, maybe it cuts your chances of getting cancer, or maybe if you get cancer, it's not going to be as bad as it would have had you not cared about your diet. Same thing with like dementia, Alzheimer's. Well, I guess if you get Alzheimer's, you're not going to remember if you did fast or didn't fast. But,
Not funny.
no, but like there's nothing bad that's going to happen. Like, well, this could happen instead of cutting down my chances of cancer. So you might get cancer when you're older and you'll be like, it didn't work. But maybe it did, and maybe you didn't get it as bad or as
Or as
soon.
soon.
Or maybe you like got rid of like one type of cancer that maybe you would have gotten. So you don't know. There's no way you're ever going to know if this works. But I mean, there's a lot of longevity doctors that do studies on this and put this information out there that you can cut down these chances. So, I mean, maybe if you incorporate fasting more often, so if you could do one fast, then maybe you're going to get a lot of benefits. And maybe you'll kill off a lot of these cells, but I'm guessing you're probably not killing all of them off in one fast. So maybe if you start doing these like once every few months or twice a year, if you can knock yourself way down, and then if that took your whole life to build up to whatever point, you do that fast again, and maybe it knocks it down again or keeps it pushing it and suppressing
Yeah,
it,
you
pushing it
just
down.
keep on killing off those bad cells, which it makes sense. I mean, watching all this information, it makes sense in my head.
Yeah, because
So
mentally it gets to a point where once you're here, like once we're in 40, what do we say, hour 46,
46.
our body right now is just killing off all these toxic cells.
Yeah.
So it gets to the point where you almost don't want to eat because you waited all this time to get to hour like 40, and you're like, man, all this like healthy stuff is happening in my body. Like, let's just fight it out. Like your body's at war and you're winning once you get 48 hours. So you're like, let's just finish this night off and go to bed. We'll wake up tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we'll be at what? Like,
we'll be at 60 hours, we'll probably be like 62, 63 hours when we wake up tomorrow. And then we'll go to the gym. That'll
Yeah.
kill some time. And that actually did curb my hunger.
yeah, sleeping is good. I kind of want to go to bed early, like, and sleep. And I was sleeping good last night. And like, I woke up this morning, I was like, I just want to keep sleeping. Like, I don't want to deal with the hunger or the thought. So I was like, let's just keep sleeping it off.
Yeah.
Let's wake up like next week. But we watched anyway. We keep watching the episode, and it talks about like the cancer and stuff, and that's why we kind of started getting into it. And so Kristen really hasn't shared it much, but like her dad was diagnosed with cancer, and so we talk about things like fasting and how important it is for somebody that either A, has it or is trying to prevent it. And so when Kristen would talk about fasting and how important it would be for him to do it, And I was agreeing. I was like, yeah, it absolutely would be the smartest thing. And I was like, I can't say things like that and not do it myself. Like I can't ever urge somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I think it's pretty hypocritical. So to say like, hey, you should be strong enough to get through this, to push yourself and be uncomfortable. Um, I have to be able to do it. And, when I start putting myself in like other people's shoes, I was like, if that was me, I would, I tell myself I would do anything, you know, whatever it would take to make myself better. And so, um, I think that's where I was like, I'll do the fast. And I just woke up. I was like, what's the point of me saying somebody should do a fast if I've never done it? So I woke up and the first 48-hour fast, I was like, let's
Mhm.
just wake up and do it. Um,
Yeah, I was impressed. I didn't think, honestly, did not think you were ever going to do it. So the
it
fact
actually
that,
wasn't that hard. I mean, if you think about it, if you stop eating at 5 o'clock at dinner time, right? Like you have dinner, you have an early dinner, you're done at 5, 5:30, 6. Just don't eat before you go to sleep. And then just finish off your night, do whatever, hang out at the house, go to bed, wake up in the morning, start doing some work, or maybe go to the gym or whatever it is you do. And before you know it, you're at like 16 hours.
yeah,
And then if you push yourself just that middle of the day where you would normally start eating lunch and dinner, if you just push yourself past that, you hit 24 hours pretty quick. 24 hours is actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And before you know it, it's 5 o'clock and you're like, wow, it's dinner time. I didn't eat. And I just hit 24 hours. So now you just got to get through that uncomfortableness of the next like 2 to 3 hours when it's like evening.
yeah.
Push yourself through there and be like, I'm going to bed, and just tap out early, go up, go to sleep. We went to bed early, typically on the fasts. And if you can get yourself to fall asleep, when you wake up in the morning, it's like we're hour
Yeah,
like,
you just banged another 8 hours.
yeah, we're at like hour 36, coming on hour 40, right? Like depending how late you sleep in the morning. And then all of a sudden, if you can get up, force yourself to go to the gym, it doesn't feel fun, but do it. Um, you're at like 40, and all you got
Yeah.
to do is get through that day, and you have 48 hours. It's really not that hard. And I never still like, there's times where my stomach will growl a little bit, but I never got to the point where I was like doubled over in pain, like, oh my God, I need to eat so bad.
I would say yesterday I had the stomach growling. Today it's a different feeling. Like I could feel like things are happening inside.
Yeah. Like I would love to eat. My daughter had soup with Ritz crackers, and like smelling the soup and looking at the crackers, I was like, you don't know how bad I want to put that salty cracker in my mouth and just like flavor it, like just savor the flavor. But you just don't. And it's like, it sucks. You just want to sometimes really bad. You get the urges. And I think that's why we're all so fat, like in America. Like you look around, everybody's fat, like disgustingly fat. And it's because like you eat lunch, and then there's people that like, they just get the urge, like, and they just don't stop the urge. Like they don't have willpower. So
Well,
like,
even just to go out and get a cup of coffee, if you go to Starbucks, you're looking at a lot of the drinks, you're looking at 300 calories for a cup of coffee.
yeah, like a
That's
latte.
ridiculous.
Yeah, give me a caramel latte,
Yeah.
500
I
calories.
mean, I like to go to Starbucks, but I get a Americano black.
And when I go to
So,
like burn boot camp, a 45-minute class, I typically on the struggle, sweating horribly, is like 500 calories for me in 45 minutes.
so one cup of coffee, you
That's a
just throw that
latte.
out.
So
Yeah.
like all of a sudden you're like midday, like let's grab another latte. I'm like, that's a whole burn boot camp class. It's like, I'm like, God, I'd rather just, it's hard. You're like, I'll just have that coffee. It's just a coffee. But people have lunch and then they get that urge of like, I'm gonna just hit Chick-fil-A. It's healthy. It's Chick-fil-A. It's chicken. I'm gonna have some grilled chicken on a bun. So Chick-fil-A, and you'll burn like you'll hit another 1,000 calories on a Chick-fil-A meal with a soda. Because everybody's like, I'll do a diet. Aspartame's good for you. So like they've had lunch and then they'll just hit that extra like McDonald's real quick. And like I used to be guilty of it. And then they throw in an extra meal. Then they go home and have dinner, and then they have that like snack, which is like half a chocolate cake for a snack before bed. You know what I mean? It's like these urges and that's what I'm feeling is like those urges where I'm like, I would love to just eat something. And it's not healthy. Like I'm not craving like broccoli, and I don't need the food. I'm good without it. But I think that's why like people struggle so bad is you get that urge and people just instantly like fix it. Like
Yeah.
I just love, a piece of whatever to eat it. But
And it's terrible. It adds up. So
yeah.
my dad was diagnosed in July with multiple myeloma, and it was crushing. So of course me and Chris are like online, we're researching everything he could possibly do, and it's like all this stuff that he could do, and he doesn't like to be uncomfortable, and it drives me nuts. So he was diagnosed then, and if you go even before that, my sister got married in May and he was on a diet. We finally got my dad to go on a diet. And it was like
Leading up to the wedding.
leading up to the wedding. So like January until really his diagnosis. And he was still kind of dieting through early stages of this, but he had lost a ton of weight. And we all know with that, when you stop eating all the processed foods, he was eating a lot of whole foods, pulled out all of the starches and stuff. And your inflammation in your body goes down when you stop eating all that crummy food. And we believe, me and my sister believe that all that was happening. And because the inflammation was dying down, other things in his body were saying, "Oh, I'm here. Like I've been here. I've been dormant, but now I'm here and I'm present." And that being the cancer. So Dad was diagnosed and everybody was really upset. We thought it'd be stage 1 and it wasn't. It was stage 3, which is the top tier of this particular type of cancer, which that hit like a ton of bricks. And right now he's gone through all of his chemo and he was told he was in remission. And I was like, this is weird because when he was going through all these chemo treatments, he was okay. He'd get tired, have these like moments. And then all of a sudden he started to have neuropathy in his feet and it went up to his calves and his legs and he can't walk. He's now
Which
walking.
is like a nerve issue, right? It's
Yeah,
like a
it's
pain nerve issue or
you
like
can't even like brush up against him. Like his lower extremities hurt if wind hits him wrong, it hurts. I know it's extremely painful
or that's a
from
side effect
it's a
of
side effect
chemo.
of this particular type of chemo and he got it bad. But all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, well, you're in this remission. We're going to get you to do this stem cell treatment and it's going to buy you multiple years." And it was like, well, to me, this makes no sense. You're in remission, so you should be good. Like my mom had breast cancer 13 years ago, 12 years, 13 years ago. She's in remission, but it's a true remission. Like she's good. Why is this different? And it's a different type of cancer. From the way I understand it, all these different types of cancers are different. So he's going through this stem cell process right now. But leading up to the process, the neuropathy is getting worse and worse. And he's done with his treatments. The chemo's over. His body is crashing harder and harder. And to me, he's in remission. Somebody said he's in remission. So he's like, I'm so blessed. I'm in remission. God's answering my prayers. And in my head, what kind of a remission leaves you like this?
Yeah, well, we talked to a friend of ours who she went through chemo and radiation, and she was asking about the neuropathy, and she said basically the place she went to where she got that treatment, the chemo and radiation, like everybody there had the neuropathy in their feet, like real bad, where it was like extremely painful, couldn't walk, their feet didn't really work the way they wanted them to, stuff like that. So I said, well, how do you deal with that? And she was like, I strap bags of ice on my feet. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did that feel? And she was like, it was like the worst pain imaginable because I guess you have issues with your nerves already. They already
You're
hurt.
shocking them.
Yeah, now you're strapping bags of ice. And I was like, how do you deal with that? And she's just like, you let it burn. Just put it on there and just let it burn.
I mean, she's walking and I mean, she's healthy now, which is
Yeah.
amazing. But when
But that's why you have to do things that are uncomfortable. Like that's why we brought up the whole fasting because with all these cancers, they feed on glucose, and glucose is sugar. And if you think about the other things in the world, like think about white bread, white pasta, white
it all turns to
bagels.
sugar.
It's just sugar cooked into a different shape. Like a white bagel is sugar. And they add a little bit of stuff to it, right? Yeast, and they create a bagel. And it's like turn it like like putting fairy dust on it. You're like, oh, here's sugar. Poof. Ooh, it's a bagel. It's not sugar anymore. And you eat it. It turns into glucose, into sugar. It goes into your body, and it's sugar. That's what carbs are. You eat white pasta. You're like, oh, it's not pasta. It's not sugar. It's pasta. Right, it's sugar. You eat in your body, it's carbs, turns to sugar. White bread, same thing. Peanut butter jelly sandwich, you have white bread, turns to sugar, goes in your body, and it's feeding all of these cancer cells. So we're like, you've got to cut out sugar, and you've got to actually starve out all these cells. That's why we do the fasting. We're like, cut out sugar, and then let's fast and just starve all of these cells completely out and start draining it. So that's why we did it. And the more people we talk to, also, it's like even people that either had cancer in the past, they say fasting now is a part of their lives. Like we know people now that have had multiple different forms of cancer and are in remission, or some of them have it like subsided and they start fasting and they do intermittent fasting. sometimes like 24-hour fasts, and sometimes long duration fasts. And their doctors are literally like, Do whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Your cancer is like, I don't know, it's like almost gone. You're reversing what you've had.
Mhm.
And everybody that says it, it's the fasting that does it. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's not fun, but it's very doable.
Yeah. So then this kind of brings me to, people don't talk about this, and I think that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Like, the what you feel when you see somebody going through this is the amount of emotions that happen are just boggling. Like, I went from being like super upset, and I mean, I at this point I cry a lot. There's a lot of crying that happens.
I'm an extremely emotional person
Is
all the time.
this because I'm a woman?
I think so.
So I get really upset. I could cry like on a dime. And then I went through a phase where I was so mad. Like, you couldn't even talk to me because I would snap. And I was just mad because I couldn't wrap my head around the neuropathy component. I was like, well, he's just being lazy. He's just sitting on the couch and he's being lazy. And then one day me and Chris went over and we were sitting with him, and I was like, yeah, but you have to walk. And he's like, I would if I could. And he got up and he's with the walker, he's walking and he's dragging his feet. And I was like, oh my God, sit down. You're going to hurt yourself. And for me, that was like a reality that he was a lot worse than I understood, and that this had progressed a lot worse than I knew at that point. So, and at that point, he was still him. Like, he was still, you could still talk to him, you could still call him, and he would have a conversation with you. How's your day? And it was like, well, dad's still there. So he's just being lazy. He's just not walking. And yes, he needs to do put the ice on his feet and do the things that make him uncomfortable. And he won't do that. So, yes, that kind of stuff makes me very angry. But he's in a position right now, too, where I'm overwhelmed with, it's just very overwhelming.
The other thing too is like with like the medical staff, medical people, most of it, when you look at like big pharma, is like the easiest way to deal with issues is prescriptions, because you always have to follow the money. It's like prescription meds runs the world. I mean,
Yeah.
runs the country, runs the world. They own everything, everything in the media, everything. It all revolves around big pharma. Um, so it's easy when you're in pain or you have an issue and you tell the doctor for them to give you a painkiller, and it's a money transaction. They make big money. Everybody makes big money off of that. The free advice is to do things like, well, strap bags of ice to your feet. That's going to fix it. Getting up and moving, circulation, heat, ice and heat therapy, fasting. All of these things are free options that are going to make your life better. Not necessarily more comfortable in the moment, might be extremely uncomfortable. The easy, comfortable thing is to just swallow like a painkiller. That's easy. And within good insurance, it can be free. But the point is, like, doctors don't give you that alternative medicine advice. Like, when you could be doing things like, if people learn that fasting can cure different diseases, then no wonder doctors don't want to push that idea on you, because now that's taking money out of everybody's pocket, that's running this whole controlled society. So the easy thing is, you know, chemo medication is pricing through the roof. The painkiller world, the money is through the roof, and they have such huge lobbying. So, like, the amount of things that can come from these companies and organizations that control everything is an incentive to everybody else. So it's a lot easier to prescribe things, take things, than it is to do things like naturally and fix things. And it took me a long time to start learning this, but we started hanging around different people and learning different things, and they're literally working. Even different supplements that we take that's not like Western medicine medication
Yeah.
makes things a lot better. So we started doing all these things, and they started wiping out illnesses and sicknesses and stuff like that. But it's definitely not the easy route than it is taking a pill.
Right. So the doctors are giving him all these painkillers, and for me, I mean, we've watched shows where like the oxycontin is dangerous, and it could kill you. Like, it can get to that point where you're taking such a high dose that it could make you crazy, and that's scary. That's really scary for me as his daughter watching this, and it's you go from like all these different feelings, and you go from like you're really sad because your father has cancer, and then you go to like, well, I'm angry because I don't think he's doing enough, and then I went to this feeling. I remember walking in the door one day. I was on the phone with my mom. I hung up, cried the whole drive home from work, and I walked in the door sobbing. And Chris is like, "What's wrong? What happened?" And I was like, "My dad's gonna die," and like it's like that was it was a mind-blowing moment for me because it was scary. And then my head of course goes like my mom. My parents are so in love, which when I was a kid it was like, okay, this is gross. But as an adult, seeing people married for as long as they've been married for, it's I mean, they're like 40 something years together. Like to me, like that's amazing. Like divorce is so popular. It's like so many people get divorced. It's not taboo anymore. And my parents have been together for as long as they have, and they're so in love. And I worry about my mom. And, she's one of my best friends. And like now she's away with him getting this stem cell treatment. And I don't get to see my mom anymore. And I get to see her every day. Like, for those of you that don't know, like my mom works out right next to me every day. She goes to boot camp with me. She works out with Chris, and we talk after camp every day. Like I get to see her. I get to give my mom a hug and a kiss every morning. Like to me, that's amazing. It's like sitting down and having a cup of coffee without the coffee. But I enjoy that, and now I don't get to see her. So now I have my dad that's going through like this whole process, and then my mom who's the caretaker, and I feel hopeless. And like I think that's kind of where I'm feeling right now. I feel completely hopeless. I feel worrisome. I feel useless. Like there's nothing that I can do at this point to fix it. He he's not even heeding my advice. And I understand like people get like this too. Like you just want to listen to the doctors, and but there are some things that I feel like are so simple. Like don't eat for 14 hours. If you do 14
Yeah.
hours today, don't eat for 16 hours. I would never say like 72 hours to him. Like that's crazy for somebody that
No, but
doesn't follow any
like
kind of nutrition
intermittent
and
fasting, like
training.
16 hours is baby
Yeah.
steps. It's literally, think about it, you're sleeping like 8 hours a day. So that's just saying, hey, for 4 hours before you go to bed, don't eat.
Yeah.
When you wake up for 4 hours, don't drink or eat, and that's it. And it's yeah, like things are uncomfortable, like sometimes in life, but you need to be uncomfortable occasionally. I mean, being uncomfortable leads to good things.
Always.
Yeah, it's always good to put yourself into an uncomfortable situation. It's not fun, and people don't enjoy it, um, but it always leads to like big rewards.
Yeah.
Like everything we do in life, like investing money, it's uncomfortable, but we do it, and we've had great success. Going to meet new people at different places is uncomfortable.
We're extremely introverted, by the way, for
Right.
those of you that don't know that.
Like, yeah, we go to different places, we do different things, put ourselves in different situations, sit in front of a camera. It's getting better over time, but in the beginning, extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or we just force ourselves to do these things that are uncomfortable. And these are like the small things in life. So
Yeah.
like these fasts, like us doing 72 hours, extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you push through it. And it's like sometimes you need somebody, like, and we do it ourselves. Like sometimes you need somebody to like kick you in the ass a little bit. Like somebody needs to tell you once in a while to like put your big boy pants on and like stop being a baby. And that's what we have. And like
But we have that with each other.
right. And that's why it gets to the point where like, and usually you have that with like guy friends too. Like, you can go, like, especially being like a cop where I was, it was like, if you ever felt weird or whatever, like you'd always have somebody there to be like, hey, knock it off. Like, you do something weird or stupid, somebody would like correct you and be like, knock it off. This is stupid. Like put your big boy pants on. But yeah, doing these things are not comfortable. That's why we've gotten to where we are as a society is,
We live in an uncomfortable
yeah, it's so
world.
like you get a little bit hungry and you don't want to be uncomfortable. So you go eat something, you go eat like crap food.
But yeah, all the crap food is what's easy to pick on too. Like
Yeah, you
you
get like a
open
little,
the pantry, it's all junk.
exactly.
It's all sugar.
Like at night, you're like, oh, I get a little craving for like some cookies. So like instead of being uncomfortable and just saying I'm not going to eat it, I'll just go to bed and deal with my craving mentally. You don't want to deal with your craving, so you're like, I'll just go to the pantry and eat a cookie. And it's like because you don't have the willpower to be uncomfortable for a few minutes, and that's where it becomes a problem. And that's where, and then again, hence these cravings are typically sugar and carb based. So
Mhm.
typically people crave carbs and sugar, which are the same thing. And that's why we get to the place we're at. So
Yeah. He actually had a doctor that told him that sugar wasn't like the cause of cancer. And I remember sitting at dinner one day when he said that, and I was like, jaw on the table. And I was just shocked because I feel like everybody says that.
people can use that title though. I'm a doctor. So what I say
Yeah.
is truth.
I was like, you must have misunderstood or asked the wrong type of question because sugar absolutely feeds cancer.
Yeah. I mean, you look up glucose and that's the other thing is some people need to like take the word sugar out and use glucose
Right. And that's fine if that's what
and
you have
start
to
doing,
do.
you'll get better research results that way. But
But glucose feeds your cells. Cancer is a cell in your body.
yeah,
Glucose feeds cancer. You need to kill the cancer. You
you
need
need
to
to
get rid
kill
of
the
the
toxic cells in your
yeah.
body. It's just, it is that basic when you really think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the different like cultures and tribes that do fasts, big time fasts all the time, and they have much more longevity. Typically, they don't. And some of the reasons is because of they don't have access to doctors to fix them when they are terminally ill. But when you take the people that are untreated medically versus the people that live here in the United States that are not treated, I mean, everybody here is treated, but they outlive us, and it's typically based on their lifestyle. They don't have like fast foods, trans fats, sugar, carbs. They don't have access to all that we do, and they incorporate a healthier lifestyle. And when you look at their bodies next to our bodies, I mean, you just turn on like any TV show, and everybody is extremely overweight, morbidly obese, and you could go to any other country and they don't have that because they don't have the things we have. And I'm not saying we need to get rid of it. It's great that we have McDonald's and Burger Kings everywhere because we're a free society and we can't have those things. But you need to have willpower. And
Yeah, that's what we need. We need to teach people how to have some willpower. That's all.
we don't have that in our society. But I mean, just like anything, I mean, being uncomfortable, like that's what makes people like a fighter. That's what makes people an actual fighter is being able to do things that are uncomfortable. We talked about like like we had our kickboxing coach over here today, and we did training with him, and he's an actual MMA fighter. And I was talking with him about it, and I said, man, like when people use that term, like fighter, right? Like an MMA fighter is gonna step up and get locked into a cage with another human being, and they're gonna end up, and they're a fighter, right? Like that's the definition of the term a fighter. They're gonna go and get like their nose broken, like get punched in the face, get their nose broken, laugh it off, and step back up for more.
They're going to shove some
Like
tissue up there and they're going to go right back in.
right, but that's the point of being uncomfortable. Is like they're experiencing actual pain beyond measure, and going back for more. That's the term a fighter. Like they could be pouring blood out of their face, and they don't have any quit. They go back, and it's uncomfortable, and they go get more and more and more. And so, like when you're going to be a fighter, like you need to be able to do things like, hey, you know what? It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to start intermittent fasting. I'm just going to fight the urge to have, like for me, like to fight the urge to have coffee in the morning. To do things like, if things are painful,
Do it anyway.
yeah, like, you find out like what works and what doesn't. Like, for instance, we did, we can get into it briefly. We talk about this more in a different episode, but we just recently did like sauna therapy and cold plunge therapy.
Oh man, you want to talk pain?
Right. Step
That
into
cold.
a ice cold pool. I mean, a lot of people do it now, but like anybody that does do it will tell you it's not comfortable. It's not like you're like, oh, this is actually really refreshing. I love 30-degree weather in the middle of the day. And
Terrible.
like getting in it and getting out, like going from like a 180-degree sauna into 30-degree water, it's your body.
It hurts.
Hurts so extremely
And
bad.
I would bet it's very popular right now. I think everybody can attest to that. But I would put money on almost everybody saying that it hurts and it's uncomfortable, but they're doing it anyway because the benefits exceed the discomfort.
Yeah, and we kept going back and forth from like in that again, and I won't get into it too much, but we would go from the extreme heat to extreme cold, and we would do this for, I mean, minutes. Like when you got in the water, you're in there for at least 3 minutes, and we do this for multiple rounds throughout the day. And you're like, wow, this is like terrible. But the next morning, I woke up and I didn't even realize I was like doing some stuff, and I was like, oh my god, like my whole upper back and neck where I have severe pain. And if you guys will notice in YouTube videos and stuff, like my head, I have like no range of motion in my neck. I can barely move my head. And my
He
neck.
usually turns his whole body.
Right. I have like a couple herniated discs in my neck, and so I could barely move. I'm like a little turtle. But I woke up and I'm like, my head's moving all around. I'm like, I feel really good. And I was like, it had to have been the ice, the heat and the ice yesterday. I was like, I feel amazing. And I was like, we've got to do this again. But I mean, the point is, it doesn't hurt when you, I mean, it doesn't feel good. Like you're sitting in like a 200-degree sauna for 15 minutes. You're just focused on staying alive and not passing out. And then you go into the ice cold and you're like concentrating on your breathing. People were like literally like, do Lamaze breathing, and you're focusing on your breathing. And then eventually it becomes easier and easier. And, but yeah, like usually painful things, uncomfortable situations, like we said earlier,
They're worth it.
reap rewards. So, I think when you look at people and you want somebody to be a fighter, you want them to actually do something that goes against them being comfortable. Like if things were comfortable and easy, that's not, that's not what fighters do. Like an MMA fighter steps in the ring. If it was easy and comfortable, everybody would do it. But for them to be an actual fighter in the ring and step in there, they've got to deal with like blood, broken bones,
Hmm.
extreme pain, lack of consciousness, losing
Exhaustion,
air, right? Everything that's so ungodly uncomfortable,
cutting weight and refeeding.
right? Like all these things, that's what you have to go through to be an
Hmm.
MMA fighter. So, I just look at it like when my number's called and we talk about like death and facing death, and I've talked about it with Kristen. It was like, when she's like, my dad's gonna die. I'm like, we're all gonna die, but guess what? Like, we don't know when. Like, it's like almost like your death dates are predetermined and they're all hidden. And then it's like if you get cancer, like somebody's slowly starting to pull back and show you like your death date, so then it's like overwhelming. We're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. And like, yeah, so am I. And so is she. So is my daughter. But it's like we don't know when that's gonna be. And it literally could be tomorrow in a car accident. It could be tonight. Like we could leave here, go drive somewhere. You know what I mean? Like it literally could be today or tomorrow, and you don't know it. And so you don't think about it because you just in your head, you're like, it's gonna be when I'm 90 years old. That's when I'm probably gonna die, but it could literally be tomorrow. We don't know it. So you just live every day to the fullest. And now all of a sudden, if like somebody's like, hey, I'm not going to tell you when, but I just found I got a call from like the big guy upstairs. It's going to be the next 4 years. And you're like, what? I'm going to die in the next 4 years. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fair. But if you didn't know that information, you would have lived every day normally. Right. But so it's kind of like somebody's just starting to tell you like, hey, I kind of know when it's coming. And they kind of tell you, and you're like, I wish I didn't know that. I would have kept living. Um, so that's the shitty part of it is
Mhm.
like you kind of get an idea as to where you might fall into place. So,
But you
but
have to be able to do all the things that are healthy to keep yourself away from death the most that you can.
right. And somebody will rebut it and say, well, yeah, but with cancer, you're going to die sooner. And it's again, we can
We
all,
don't, yeah, we can get
we
hit by
can
our car
all die
tomorrow.
tomorrow. We don't know when it's
Hmm.
going to be, and if it's all predetermined, your death date is written down somewhere. You just don't know when it's
Yeah.
going to be. You assume it's going to be when you're old, but it literally could end at any point in time. Um,
I
you know,
know when my dad started doing poorly, my we were sitting down at dinner one day and my daughter asked me, Mommy, am I gonna get cancer? And at first I'm like, no, of course not. That's terrible. Why would you say that? And then I had to sit back and I can't lie to her. She's 12 years old. So I composed myself and I explained to her that why me and Chris, we eat right, we work out, we take care of ourselves, we do things like fasting, do things that make us uncomfortable. We do all this because when or if something like cancer or heart disease or diabetes, something pops up that's aggressive, we are so healthy that, and this is just my hope, but we're so healthy that we can fight it, that we're going to be strong enough to fight it, and that we have the mental capacity and physical strength to be uncomfortable and fight it. So, am I going to get cancer? Is she going to get cancer? I have no idea. Only God knows that. I have no clue. But I can do everything in my power to keep myself as healthy as possible for my husband and for my daughter and for my family. And that is what we're doing with this fast.
yeah.
There was a reality check when a 12-year-old asks if I'm going to get cancer. And it's heart wrenching, but I think the best thing that I could do is be honest with her and explain to her why. And that I think gave her, I mean, yeah, mommy goes to the gym a lot. Mommy's always watching what she eats. She's weighing her food. But now I think she has a better understanding as to why I'm doing all of this.
Yeah. And I think one thing we can kind of end it with too is like, you said God knows. And so for me, I'm not a religious person, although I was raised in a Catholic family. And, I kind of, in a way, I just fell out of it and I started believing differently. And, I believe in science and it is what it is. And, People can have their own faiths. I really don't care what you do, what you believe in. That doesn't matter to me. Um, but so, when we talk about like people talk about like, well, pray or prayer, God, all that kind of stuff. I think, okay, well, like let's say I do venture to believe that route, right? And believe that it is God who fixes everything. Um, people could say like, well, if you say a prayer for somebody is going to fix it, and I say, okay, well that could work in theory, but let's say if God is real, and we do think that way, is that maybe maybe God put people, right, like Kristen here on this planet to help to impact somebody. So maybe he put her here with some kind of information, like the stuff that we've been talking about in this podcast, to give that information. So that way, one day when you go up and you look at your God and you say, man, I prayed, you didn't do anything. Look, here I am, standing right here in front of you. Like I prayed you every night and you didn't do anything. Here I am. And maybe God will look back at you and be like, well, I gave you your daughter and she stood there right in front of you and spit out all this advice that I gave to her and you didn't listen. Somebody told me once too, a story. I don't know what it's called. Story. These,
It's a parable. I know
is
what
it
you're
a
thinking.
parable?
It's a
Well,
parable. It's a religious parable.
yeah, basically, like if somebody told me this, where a man falls into a river and he's going downstream and he's struggling, he can't really swim well, and he goes under this branch and there's a guy on the branch and he says, reaches his hand out and says, "Here, grab my hand, I'll pull you to safety." And the guy says, "No, God's gonna save me. I'm a Christian or whatever it is. God will save me. Don't worry." And he lets that guy go. Later down the stream, he's still going, trying to get to the shore bank, still going downstream. And there's another man there with a net, and he throws the net, and he says, "Grab this net." And he goes, "No, I don't need the net. God's going to save me." And then finally gets down the stream a little further, and there's a third guy there, and the third guy does the same thing. Reaches out, he says, "Take my hand. I'm going to pull you to safety." The guy says, "God will save you. Don't worry about it." And then shortly thereafter, the guy drowns and dies. And he goes, finds God. And he says to God, like, "Dude, I prayed to you all the time, my whole life, all this stuff. I prayed to you. You thought you were going to save me. You never did. Like, what's the deal with that? Explain that to me. Explain how you did not save me when I prayed to you my whole life. I did all these things." And he says, "Well, I did help you. I gave you those three guys. You ignored them. That's on you. I did what I could do to help you." So I think the point of it is like maybe, if you're counting on just strictly prayer or religion, is that maybe they are actually being answered. Maybe they are helping you and they're putting the answers in front of your face. You just don't see them. So I think that's a big thing to think of when it looks, because again, I don't necessarily believe that like a divine intervention is going to fix or change my life. Personally, that's just the way I believe. But I do think that there's ways that you can take control of your own destiny, and your actions are what leads to your fate or your demise, either way. Um, so I think that's kind of like the last thing I had to say about it. So you can touch on your final thoughts. But
I
um,
mean, I believe in the science. I'm with Chris, but I do believe in God. I was raised Catholic, and I believe in a situation. I brought that exact situation to my dad one day. We were fighting with him to drink water. Like, you need to stay hydrated. And I remember sitting there and I was like, listen, I was like, I'm here right now telling you, like, God's telling you, you need to drink water. And I gave him that same parable and I explained it to him. And that is what I believe. I believe that you can pray, but God's not going to physically just lift you up and say, okay, today you're healthy and you're good to go. He's going to give you the resources. Should you choose to utilize them, is on you. He's given you the path. And I do believe that God gives you that path. They're put in front of you, and then science kind of takes the wheel should you choose or choose not to utilize them.
the
But
same way that you're
that's,
like, oh, certain people came into my life for a reason. Like sometimes you meet somebody random, like you go
yeah.
on a weird vacation somewhere, you meet somebody, you're like, yeah, I think maybe I was destined to meet this person, and
Hmm.
they change your life or something big happens because of that person. You're like, maybe there's a reason we met. Maybe it was just coincidence. But again, if you believe that
I
logic, you're
believe,
like,
yeah.
maybe there was a reason that we were put to
I
meet.
believe people are
So
put in your path for a reason. So maybe you're here, you watch us to the end, and this is going to help you one day. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe you come back to this and say, I remember watching something about that.
yeah,
And maybe it's something you give to your loved one that needs a little kick in the butt.
yeah. Well, maybe we'll bring this up. We'll talk about more topics like this. If stuff like this, like the fasting, the cancer stuff, is interested to you, obviously please comment below. We could do this again. And like I said, there's other people that we know in this space that would be willing to talk. So let us know if this is something that interests you guys. If there are other topics that you guys want us to talk about on this podcast, comment them down below on this video or on any of the videos, and we'll check them out too. And yeah, we try to kind of keep it an open book and talk about everything that you guys ask for.
Yeah, like
So.
this is what we're dealing with right now, so it is a topic of discussion.
Are we at 72 hours yet of our fast?
No, we're not.
All right.
But thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this interesting and useful. And
Much love.
all the love. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.